Imagine looking at a family photo taken in Boston in 1905. The clothes are exquisite, the faces are solemn, and in the center, a bright-eyed little girl sits perfectly still as if time has stopped to preserve the moment. But the closer you look, the more strange it becomes. The stiff pose, the strange light on her skin, and an indescribable feeling make the seemingly ordinary portrait seem unsettling. In today's video, we follow a modern researcher who accidentally discovered the secret hidden in the photo. From turn-of-the-century photography techniques to little-known funeral rituals, the story reveals a prominent Boston family and its haunting obsession with loss. Where art, grief, and lies collide, a seemingly perfect portrait becomes a testament to a tragedy no one wants to admit. Welcome to Sleepy History Tales. It's time to relax. Listen to a strange historical story like a whisper from the past. And before we start, I want to ask, where are you watching this video from and what time is it? There's a 1905 portrait that's been hidden for decades. When it's finally brought to light, a small detail makes everyone fall silent. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let me tell you this in true Sleepy History Tale style slowly, in a whisper, like telling an old secret before bed. The construction site is humming. Lead builder Michael Sullivan wipes sweat from his brow as his crew prepares to knock down the final wall of the Whitmore House, a grand Victorian home on Boston's prestigious Beacon Hill. The mansion, built in 1885, had been vacant for nearly 30 years before the city ordered it to be cleared for redevelopment. What should have been a routine demolition job takes on a surprising moment when Sullivan's sledgehammer breaks through the ornate wallpaper and reveals a small compartment hidden behind the dining room's mahogany paneling. "Why are you all stopping?" he called, putting down his tools, leaning over to peer into the empty space. Inside, wrapped in yellowed silk and framed in a wooden frame, was a large, seemingly untouched portrait. It showed a family, dressed in formal attire, sitting in the center of the room. They were standing in like a whisper from the past, speaking to this place. On the back of the frame, in elegant handwriting, was the date and name, Whitmore Portrait, 1905. The father, his face stern, sat in a leather chair. The mother stood sideways, her hand resting lightly on her husband's shoulder. Two boys in sailor uniforms stood on either side, and a girl of about 8 stood prominently in the center, wearing an elegant white dress with delicate lace. Did the image feel both familiar and strange, as if someone had staged a moment rather than let it happen? Sullivan immediately called the Boston Historical Society. He knew this was no ordinary discarded item. The photograph was strangely preserved, and its concealment in the wall raised the question who hid it and why. There was a story hidden beneath the wallpaper and social decorum that people didn't want to talk about. Within hours, Dr. Amanda Foster, curator of 19th century American photography at the Historical Society, was there. With a trained eye, she noticed the unusual compositional and technical aspects of the photograph, which didn't quite fit the usual practice of family photography in the early 20th century. She, quietly wearing white cotton gloves, touched the edge of the frame and whispered, "It's unusual. The preservation is excellent, but the lighting and the positioning of the figures make me think this isn't a typical family photo shoot." Can you imagine what it must have felt like to stand next to her in that dusty room, like someone accidentally pulling back the curtain on a story that had been dormant for too long? This discovery was just the beginning of an investigation that would uncover a family secret that would send shivers down Boston's spine. Pulled from the wall and brought back to the Historical Society's lab, the portrait underwent a series of careful analyses, traditional archival methods alongside modern digital techniques. Under controlled lighting, Dr. Foster peered in and saw that the photo, despite its 1905 label, seemed to contain small but significant anomalies. The first anomaly was the lighting on the faces of the figures. The parents and two sons bore the shadow and highlight patterns typical of the studio style of the time, natural and harmonious. The little girl in the middle was different. The light cast on her seemed to come from different shooting conditions, as if she had been photographed separately and then composited into the family photo with a sophisticated technique. Do you see the spine of the story begin to bend a little? Is the photo hiding something? Dr. Foster contacted the Boston Municipal Archives to track down Whitmore family records. Early records showed that Jonathan Whitmore was a successful textile manufacturer who lived in the Beacon Hill mansion with his wife Margaret and their 3 children from 1885 until 1920, when the family mysteriously left Boston without leaving a moving address. Birth records confirmed their 3 children: Benjamin, born in 1892, Charles, born in 1894, and Alice, born in 1897. The information seemed complete, but the cage in the photo still made Dr. Foster uneasy. As she began cross-referencing these names with other records, a discovery stopped her according to the city's death certificate. Alice Whitmore died of scarlet fever in 1903, 2 years before the date on the portrait. A cold contradiction emerged if Alice had died in 1903. Then who was the girl in the 1905 photograph? This opened up a host of haunting possibilities. Was the death certificate wrong? Was it a different Alice? Was the year on the frame a mistake, or was it deliberately misspelled to hide something? Or worse, was it an attempt to edit the memory with images, to preserve the figure of the deceased in an imaginary setting? What do you think? Would a family have the motivation to do that? Dr. Foster knew she needed to dig deeper. She called in genealogists, demanding access to more Whitmore material: medical records, school lists, social letters, anything that might shed light on Alice's fate. Every piece of paper, every handwriting could be a piece of the puzzle. And like every piece of history, sometimes it is the silence, the hidden thing, that tells more than the accusations. The investigation had now grown far beyond a simple historical archive project. It had become a journey into a mystery involving one of Boston's most prominent families. Dr. Amanda Foster had gone beyond the Whitmore family records to delve into the history of photographic techniques from 1905, specifically the methods that might have allowed the photographer to create composite images or to manipulate them to account for the strange lighting around little Alice in the portrait. 2 weeks later, during a long night in the lab, Dr. Foster discovered something that sent a chill down her spine. Under magnification and modern digital technology, she noticed something she had never noticed before. Alice's eyes seemed artificially placed, unnatural. And looming just behind the white dress was a slender, almost invisible structure supporting her small body. Using infrared photography to examine the image further, she saw clearly a thin metal rod, like a wire, ran from the floor up Alice's spine to hold her upright. Anyone familiar with Victorian photography would immediately recall. This type of device was used in a haunting practice, post-mortem photography. The dead were posed, made up, and photographed as if they were still alive, to preserve a final memory. The realization hit Dr. Foster like a hammer blow. The image before her was not just a family photo shoot. It was a post-mortem photo where little Alice, who had died in 1903, was placed in a false scene of happiness to create the illusion that the family was still whole in 1905. The strange lighting, the stiff pose, the awkward position. It all suddenly made sense. They had not let go. They created an image of a home that no longer existed. While post-mortem photography was popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, most simply showed the deceased lying in bed or with a few mourning relatives. Staging a formal family portrait attempting to hide the death and pretend the child was still alive was extremely raw and required the special skills of specialized photographers. Can you imagine? A photographer with a deft hand and a strange coolness helping a family maintain the illusion that the death never happened. To verify, Dr. Foster contacted Dr. Stanley Rodriguez, an expert on Victorian funeral rites and post-mortem photography at Harvard University. Upon hearing the news, Dr. Rodriguez sighed, then confirmed, "What you found is extremely rare. This is not just a souvenir photo. This is a whole fabrication, a family desperately clinging to an imagined memory." A few days later, he visited Dr. Foster's lab to examine the photo himself. Under a magnifying glass, he pointed out every detail Alice's eyes had been painted or manipulated to look bright and spirited. Her skin had been painted pink to fake a healthy hue. "This is one of the most sophisticated post-mortem techniques I have ever seen," he whispered. The photographer not only had extraordinary technical skills, but was also an artist who knew how to stage life against the backdrop of death. What do you think? Was this filial devotion or haunting denial? A way of holding on to the shadow of a lost child, or an illusion in which the family itself is imprisoned? The autopsy continued to reveal layers of elaborate staging, all designed to make Alice appear as if she were a living child at home among her family. Her hair was carefully combed, possibly even with artificial curls added to create a full, healthy appearance. Something that would certainly not be present on a body that had been dead for 2 years. The white dress, while fashionable for the period, bore traces of clever alterations to conceal the supporting frame, allowing the skirt to fall gracefully and naturally. Dr. Rodriguez explained softly in Victorian times, child mortality was truly appalling. Before modern medical advances, the loss of a child was a tragedy familiar to most families. For the poor, it was a raw pain, with few ways to alleviate it. But wealthy families like Whitmore had the means to resort to elaborate and expensive memorials, even elaborate staged posthumous portraits. Just imagining it is chilling. Alice's body had to be carefully preserved and prepared, placed in a hidden metal frame, while the photographer worked frantically to capture the image before the signs of decomposition became apparent. Lighting, composition, and every line might have to be tried and tested many times to achieve the perfect seamlessness we see in the final image. Dr. Foster now understood that only a very few photographers in major cities could perform this elaborate technique. It required not only photographic skill, but also an understanding of cosmetics, costumes, and a special psychological sensitivity to work with grieving families. As Dr. The Whitmores didn't just want to preserve a memory, Rodriguez notes. They wanted to create an alternate reality where the loss never happened, where the family was still intact. Determined to learn more, Dr. Foster began tracking down photographers active in Boston in 1905 who might have been able to afford such a complex posthumous work. She searched studio advertisements, professional directories, and newspaper archives for clues. Only 3 photographers in Boston at the time openly advertised their memorial and funeral photography services. And among them, one name stood out: Herman Blackwood. His studio was located in the fashionable Back Bay area. In the Boston Globe's Society pages, Blackwood specifically promoted artistic memorial photography for sophisticated families. Further investigation revealed that Blackwood's business records were still held in the archives of the Boston Public Library. The records revealed that Blackwood apprenticed in London with posthumous photographers, bringing his techniques to America in the 1890s. His client list included many prominent Boston families, a testament to the reputation and discretion he cultivated. In particular, Dr. Foster found a detailed entry for a Whitmore family commission, dated September 1905. The description was clear: a memorial family portrait requiring special preparation and staging. The preparation alone took 3 days, and Blackwood received a fee of $200, the equivalent of many thousands of dollars today, a huge sum for a specialized service. In Blackwood's professional notes, he carefully describes the use of cosmetics imported from Paris to restore the natural color, the design of a custom-made support frame to create a lively pose, and the close cooperation with a funeral home and a tailor to alter Alice's dress so that the supporting structure could be hidden. And the detail that shocked Dr. Foster the most was the last note. Margaret Whitmore, the mother, was present throughout the process, personally directing every detail of her pose, her face, her little girl's final appearance. Can you imagine it? A mother 2 years after losing her child, still standing by, taking care of every strand of hair, every fold of her dress, to recreate the image that her heart refused to let go of. Do you think it was undying love or an obsessive denial of reality? The photographer also notes that Mrs. Whitmore insisted on placing Alice at the center of the composition so that she would always be the heart of our family. That command, simple yet firm, speaks volumes. A mother who refused to let her child be sidelined even after she was gone. Dr. Foster traces Blackwood's career and finds that his studio closed abruptly in 1906, just a year after Whitmore's session. His final advertisement in the Boston Globe announces that he is retiring from memorial photography to specialize in landscape photography, as if to distance himself from the images he once put his heart and soul into. Some say the emotional toll of the profession was too heavy. Perhaps the images of life against the backdrop of death came at a heavy price. Mrs. Foster continues her investigation into the Whitmore family's private lives. In the archives of the Massachusetts Historical Society, she found a series of letters between Margaret Whitmore and her sister in New York, folded pages of secret sadness. In one letter from March 1904, Margaret wrote, "The house is indescribably empty without Alice's laughter. Jonathan hardly speaks at meals, and the boys are constantly describing when she will return from her long sleep. I fear we are all becoming ghosts in our own house, haunted by her absence from all social gatherings and occasions." The letters reveal a heavy social pressure in upper-class Boston. At the time, family tragedy could be scandalous. Some saw it as a sign of moral lapses or of poor housekeeping. The Whitmores, in their prestigious position, were all the more vulnerable to such scrutiny. When Dr. R. Foster discovered the portrait's true purpose, it was part of a formal directory. The distinguished families of Beacon Hill, that the upper class was compiling in 1905, the rationale behind their actions became clearer. They had to appear in the directory. They could not afford to leave the family photo in a glaring blank, nor did they want to withdraw from the prestigious book. Rather than see their family marked defective, they chose to grieve in another way to restore wholeness. Margaret later wrote in a tone that was both apologetic and self-righteous. We knew Alice had gone to be with God, but we could not bear for the world to see our family broken. This portrait allows us to remember ourselves as we were meant to be whole, blessed with 3 beautiful children. It may be vanity, but to me it is love. Do you sense the contradiction at once holy and selfish, at once comforting and confining? Furthermore, medical records reveal that Jonathan Whitmore was diagnosed with heart disease shortly after Alice's death. Doctors warned that any further emotional shock could be fatal. Margaret, in her anxiety, seems to have believed that maintaining the familial facade of peace, at least in public, could preserve her husband's health and shield her children from excessive public pity. Decisions, however bizarre or heartbreaking, are often born of fear, and fear can lead people to solutions that history rarely tells. Dr. Foster also found evidence that other upper-class Boston families had also used techniques to conceal or minimize grief, but few went to the same lengths and expense as Whitmore. These public image-building measures were part of the way the world preserved its reputation. And within that secrecy, post-mortem photography became a powerful tool, not only recording loss, but also rewriting memories to fit the desired image. To understand how Herman Blackwood created this vivid illusion, Dr. Foster collaborated with restoration experts and used digital technology to meticulously analyze the images. The results revealed a level of sophistication that was chilling. Alice's eyes were not ordinary eyes. They were crafted from thin glass discs, meticulously painted with eyeballs placed over closed eyelids and held in place with a primitive glue. Then the retoucher painstakingly added paint blush and hand painting to the photo to blend the fake eyes with the rest of the face. This technique, a combination of cosmetics, delicate craftsmanship, and hand painting, transformed the body into a living embodiment of life right there on the photograph. Don't you feel a chill down your spine? The thought that the eyes in the photo could be shards of glass silently staring at you while her real body was gone. This story is more than just a photographic history. It's a story about family, about grief, about social status, and about all the ways people try to preserve what they can't save. But that's not all. There are pages and pages of records and letters and questions about the social consequences, about Blackwood, and about the Whitmore family itself waiting to be unearthed. I'll continue with the next part, where the past collides directly with present consequences and where those choices leave indelible marks. The glass was skillfully painted to match Alice's real eye color with tiny reflective points of light, making the eyes in the photo seem alive and alert. Behind her pretty dress, the team discovered a sophisticated mechanical structure specially made for this portrait. It was a thin steel frame with adjustable joints that could hold Alice's body upright naturally, but completely disappeared from the lens. The cotton was cleverly inserted so as not to leave any marks on the fabric, and the entire mechanism could be quickly removed, minimizing the time of the photo shoot. When analyzing the surface of Alice's skin, Dr. Foster discovered that Alice was covered in many layers of cosmetics, from wax foundation blush to a fine powder coating, all to create the illusion of a rosy, vibrant face. Blackwood even used diluted oil paint to create delicate tones, simulating the pattern of blood flowing under the skin of a living person. Art and death were mingled in a chillingly magical way. But what was even stranger was that Alice's body had been dead for 2 years when the photograph was taken. Such preservation could only have been achieved by the advanced embalming techniques that were rare in Boston in 1905. Whitmore apparently hired one of the best mortuaries, perhaps even using experimental methods not yet known to the public. To complete the illusion, Blackwood used a variety of light sources, cleverly arranging shadows so that Alice blended seamlessly with the living members. Reflectors and additional lights were meticulously placed, erasing any sign that the body had long since stopped breathing. And the result was a photograph that to the average person would not betray the deception. Alice appeared as a normal child sitting between her parents and siblings, her eyes shining as if watching the passage of time. But the truth behind the photograph gradually eroded the family's spirit. City records and private correspondence reveal a family increasingly isolated, eventually falling apart under the weight of the secret. In 1910, just 5 years after the photograph was completed, Margaret Whitmore suffered a violent breakdown. At a party, a friend casually asked about Alice's education. The seemingly harmless question triggered a panic attack, as if the mask she had built for so long was ripped away in an instant. Jonathan Whitmore, protected by this illusion, was not spared from the collapse. Massachusetts General Hospital records his bouts of anxiety and a veiled confession of a family secret that left him exhausted. The truth was never told to his 2 sons Benjamin and Charles. Letters to their cousins reveal the boys' confusion over their sister's long absence and their parents' evasive answers. It wasn't until 1915 that Charles, then a schoolboy while researching a family tree for an assignment, discovered Alice's death certificate. The discovery plunged the family into irreparable crisis. In 1920, the Whitmores quietly sold their Beacon Hill mansion and left Boston without leaving an address. The family members scattered their bonds, dissolving as the secret was revealed. Margaret spent the rest of her life in a California sanatorium, still speaking to Alice as if she were still present. Jonathan died in 1925. And in his obituary, not a single line mentioned a daughter named Alice. Thus, the child who had been placed in the center of the photograph to be the heart of the family forever was finally erased from public memory. What do you think? Is it possible that sometimes, in an effort to preserve wholeness, people unintentionally push their most cherished memories into cold oblivion?